Okay, but he's here, and I won a winner box with birds. It was 3 or 4 rounds, and it was an EX6 event, and it's like, okay, why am I posting a birds deck in EX6? Well, the deck is still really good. It has a good Demon Lords matchup, which is going to be a popular deck. Pretty much like everything in EX6, you have a decent matchup into, and the rest of the matchups, you lose to Numi, but you win into a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, basically showcasing that birds is very much alive, and you can keep playing it. And I got first place. We got some boxes. It was cool. Anyway, let's actually get into the list. I won't waste too much of your time. Shout out to Tommy Tricks on Canty Elixir. He did a video that goes into much more depth. So if you want a more in-depth version of like birds, what every single card does, you should go check out that video. I'm just basically going to do a very speedy deck profile. We'll start off. So we'll go with for Yokomon. It's your egg. Turns everything on, unleashing the recurve piece, super, super good. You don't want to play literally anything else because you never need 4 eggs. You usually kill people by the second, very rarely the third. Then we play 4 copies of the super rare Biomon, gets you any red card. This is important because we are playing things that are not red vaccines or, even like some of your most powerful cards are tamers or options. So 4 copies of the Biomon, very good card. And then I like playing 4 copies of the BT11 Biomon because it's a plus 1. Straight up Pot of Greed gets you your tamers, which you do play a decent amount of tamers. It's also another memory ESS. And, it's one of the few, it's a searcher that you can recur. Like, you can play it out, it dies, a Sora or whatever, bring it back, get another search again. There's different ways to, like, get 2 searches on the same turn. So, and that's basically, you're seeing 6 cards in your deck. And now, this list is based off of the Spanish list that topped, and shoutouts to Dyer as well on Hein's Discord. He also, and Omega, like, we've been sort of, like, working on the deck a little bit, just, like, talking theory, nothing, like, not like a grind sesh, but just people that I talk to about the deck, and shoutouts to Tommy Tricks, of course, as well. Those have been the people that I've been exchanging bird information with. We've been sending carry pigeons to each other. We all kind of decided that, like, the Christie package is worth playing because, well, one, it did get a top in Spain, and the idea of the Christie package is that it's a lot of advantage on the opponent's turn, and also creates a lot of, like, traps that the opponent, doesn't really know how to beat sometimes, especially if they haven't read the bird cards. You can create some really disgusting, like, defensive lines. And also, the reason why this Biomon's really important is because while, if the bird flowchart, you usually want to get the opponent to 3 security, but sometimes that's difficult to set up. However, this Biomon lets you sort of get into that position because you skip a level by warping, and you're effectively playing out level 5s for free with like a good ESS. You're cycling more cards. Overall, it's like the best thing you could be playing. All of the other rookies or all the other level 3s that you could play don't do enough. The EX1 BU is okay. The Baramon doesn't come up, and so like this is just the most consistent other Biomon. I'm playing a bit more rookies than most people. Some people play like 9. I think 10 is... I'm playing 11. Yes, I think 11 is a good number. You could go down to 10 if you really wanted to. Now, for the Bergermons, we're playing 3 copies of the Blocker Play Out a Tamer. It's the best Bergermon in stack, just because it's efficient. It's always useful. It's a good, like, card for you to put Garuda Ace on top of. It just does a lot. Like, the ESS especially is, like, very, very nice. I like 2 copies of the Add Back Bergermon, just because it's a memory ESS. It also just evolves for 2. But being able to add things back, and if you have a Sora in play, triggering that Sora is very, very important. It helps you create lethals out of scenarios where you raise with the rookie, and then you evo into him, and then, you start doing your combos, especially if the opponent's at low security. 2 copies of the Sacred Bergermon. This card, when I see it, it's clutch, but, you don't, with only 2 copies, you don't see it that often, but it's still kind of important into some matchups, in particular things like Imperial, because, the way to beat Imperial is by playing this out off of your BT 15 PHOENIXMON, and then, you basically give the opponent 2 choices, and, it's kind of a lose-lose for them. So, 2 of the Saber. It's also just like a, Raid Retaliation just outs a bunch of random things. And then I'm playing 1 copy of the Achillemon. The Achillemon, even though it's not a vaccine, it's still, a giant bird. They truly, like, the tag of, like, the card is called a giant bird. But it's a low-level body that can play out that pops things on play. So, against theoretically decks like Numemon or decks that, you know, will have like little goobers around, like you can use Garuda X to get rid of the ace targets, this to get rid of rookies, and then Phoenix X to get rid of like main stacks. So it's a pretty good card, also decent on deletion. Would I play more copies of this card? Maybe. It didn't really hurt me. It was actually pretty good like all day. So now for one of the best cards in the deck, Garuda X. This card just does everything. It's like your main aggro engine. Not only does it give things rush, but it also burns the security. Like the card is just insane. Like adding, it just does everything the deck wants to do. This card does it in one. Like this card is like overloaded with like good effects. You know, one of the two reasons why this deck is like as good as it is half of that reason is this this card. And then we are only playing 2 of the ace. And, you know, some people want to play 3 or 4 even, but realistically, the ace is a little bit specific into the matchup that it's really good into. And for the matchups that it's good, you just either mulligan for it or like you prioritize it in your searches. It's also a good warp target. It does a lot of things for you, but it is an ace at the end of the day. So, you know, you have to be careful on how you use it, but it's like a phenomenal card. I do have some of the alts, but my girlfriend took them all to put them in Sylphimon, so the deck looks a bit plain. 2 copies of the BT... What are you? BT50? 13, yes, because it's the Daemon set. This Garudamon is part of the Christie package. You have to play it. Also pretty good for the on-deletion to pop 6Ks. Again, having on-deletion effects that pop smaller bodies, you deal with semi-wide boards. And the reason that's important is because we also cut the Crimson Blaze. Crimson Blaze is bait. You'd rather just play efficient on-deletion effects to deal with things, right? As opposed to playing a card that, if you're playing it in this deck, you're probably behind. But yeah, playing 3-cost Tamer, it plays either Akiho or Christie, and that's just like stupidly good. 1 copy of my favorite Garuda, the BT11 Garuda. I love this card so much. It's blocker and also, you know, plays Tamer, but it's a really good card to constantly add back and play instead of the ace, because you can always put the Garuda X on top of it, and then even if it dies, you get your Tamer out. It's just a super, super fun card to loop, but you just don't have space to play more. But if you see it, the card feels great, and it's my favorite Garudamon to use. Now, for the 6s, only 3 Phoenix X. You generally have time to get to this, because this version of the deck is more stack-centric, so you do have time to find your Phoenix X. And I've won games without Phoenix X, just like Garuda rushing people is still pretty powerful, especially with the Christie package. But this card is a super rare. Like the rare is just because they couldn't make a 3rd super rare for the set, but this card is like super rare level powers of good. It just changes the way that the deck works. Like triggering all of your on-deletions as end of attack is insane. They managed to fix the deck.
Attach,
okay? The card says attach. That's a new keyword. Yeah, it's just the best card in your deck. But like, why is it moving like that? It's kind of crazy. PHOENIXMON, you're wilding. 3 copies of the BT15 Phoenix. This card is also very crazy. I remembered recently that you can, you know, swing to your effect and then play out PHOENIXMON, and if you have the Garuda X, you essentially get to do something really normal and burn 2 security, because you'll trigger the effect of the PHOENIXMON first to play out this. This will then burn 1 because the opponent will be at 4 health, and then you then use this to put them to 3 security. To put them at 2 security, so you've dealt 1 damage and you burn 2 security, and then from 2 security, you have 2 level 6s out on the board, and that's just so much tempo into decks that play into your, you know, your win con of like on deletion. You just win. It's crazy how good these cards like work well together. But yeah, this PHOENIXMON is good as like a way to make use of your Akihos, because Garuda X gating rush, a lot of times your Akihos are just kind of like sitting still, so using this to play out a body and then that can give it rush is nice, or you can use it to play your Tamers. Versatile and also just incredible on play on deletion. Because it's an on deletion as well, you get to trigger on the opponent's turn, so you know, it makes the opponent not want to get rid of this card, and if they don't, then you can put a Phoenix X on top of this. So very, very good card. And now for Spice. It's not Spice, it's just 2 Valk aces. So shouts to Tommy Tricks, he was the one that put me on exactly 2. A lot of people have been testing the 1, but we came to the conclusion that this card is so good that it's worth playing 2, despite not being searchable other than like your trainings and your Bumon. And the reason for that is the Christie package, and I'll put this aside and I'll explain like how this card works with the Christie package. But this is one of your like decks other defensive lines, just you go into Valcase, and some decks just struggle to play into Valcase. And now for options and tamers, 2 X antibodies, you know, standard. It just does everything, like makes cheaper and faster combos. 4 copies of Sora. It's so slow, you know? I hate having a tamer that sets me to 3 and plays out a body, and it's not once per turn, and I can just loop the same tamer over and over again. Mixed rarities too. 2 Akiho, you know. I like Akiho, it's a good card, it's a searcher, gives things rush. You don't need too many copies of it. Generally, like, you either win without seeing it at all, or like 1 Akiho is enough throughout the course of the game just to get extra pokes in, or like to go for game. It just helps you win a turn faster, which is great because this deck wants to win fast. And then 2 copies of Christie. So I will now quickly elaborate on why Christie is worth playing, because a lot of people, myself included at one point, I didn't think Christie was worth playing. And then the more I thought about it, the more, you know, it matters, because like I said, when you are at when the opponent's at 4 security, it's hard to, you know, kind of get that extra damage in. A lot of times they already have defensive lines established. Christie lets you skip all of that. So one of the things that you can do is if you have the Christie out, you know, you'll tag something, you'll die, you play the BU evolve, add this back, and now you go in and you play out this, right? And you have this setup. So you have a Christie that you've played out that is making this, going to the Digimon again, and you have this Garudamon. The problem is that while this is good, it doesn't do anything else on the opponent's turn. If you have the super rare Garuda, the Garuda Ace, then yes, you can kill blockers, but a lot of decks don't care about being blockers. So you want something to put on top of like this setup, and this is where Valk Ace comes in, right? Because now Valk Ace, not only do you get to rune mode your opponent, and you know, 5k minus, you get to kill something with AKDP after, you know, you've Valked them, so that is 13k? And you get to also pop a 6k, which effectively is an 11k with Valk. And because you gave it the Christie the Christie buff, when it dies, you get to play out the BU and then do the loop again. And then, you know, you're basically where you started. And let's say you have another Valk. Now that's 2 rune modes. And now the opponent's under -10. And that's like super unplayable for some decks. That's basically, I just wanted to elaborate why Valk is like the future for this deck. 2 training, and then the best card in the deck that we only have space for 2 Wings of Love. All of your broken, disgusting combos happen because you drew Wings of Love. But the card, you need a few things to be set up for you to be able to maximize how good this card is. So, you know, we're playing 2 because if you see it earlier, it's great. You will draw into it, and then if one's insecure, you always have the one in your deck. Would I want to play 3? Yes, of course, but there's no space. Arguably, you could cut the Valk to play a 3rd Wings, or like if you can play another delay. That's something that a lot of the topping lists are doing, is that they're playing more delay cards. Because delay cards are good, but I'm greedy and I like having lots of bodies. I want my hand to have things for me to do. So yeah, that's basically birds. The deck is really fast and the deck is really good. Go play some birds, you have a good Demon Lord matchup. That's it. I won in the finals against Demon Lords.
Bird up.
Bird up.